Hello and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast Week in Mobile Games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. I'm Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz, and with me, as usual, is our news editor, Aaron Astle. Welcome back, Aaron. We missed another week.
Yes.
We're slipping.
Yeah. Not as bad as January, but...
No. Well, thankfully, I haven't been ill, for about a month. We missed last week's show. I've just been traveling and didn't get a chance to set this up. So we'll go into it. I've been to Gamescom LATAM in Brazil, which was great fun. And then straight away, I went home for one evening. The next day, flew out to Dubai for Dubai GameExpo Summit, powered by Pocket Gamer Connects, which has also been great. And that's where I am now. I'm still in Dubai. Hopefully this records. We'll find out. If you're listening to this, it means it worked. But yeah, it's very hot here. That's one of my main takeaways. It's like 40 degrees. Someone was telling me it's not even that hot at the moment. I was like, come on, man. Come on. Can't be serious. Not with my pasty skin. But yeah, I've had a nice world tour. I think I'm tired, but I don't really realise how tired I am. So if I sound like I'm speaking more nonsense than usual, that is hopefully why. But no, it's been good. How's everything been for you?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's been very busy while you've been away. I guess before we jump into all the newsy stuff, my recent highlight was probably I went to see Star Wars Episode 3 at the cinema because it's back in for like the 20th anniversary.
You've seen it before, right?
Yeah. It made me feel old because I saw it originally as a very young child, only half understood what was going on, and so to be old enough to remember seeing the original and then back for the 20th anniversary.
Did it ruin your childhood?
Actually, it was all right. I think it holds up.
I think that's supposed to be the better one, or the best one. Sorry.
Yeah. I would argue it's the best of the Star Wars films.
Oh, that's
my
criminal.
Gen Z controversial
That's
take.
a crime.
It's better than the original.
So you mean of the prequels, right? Episode 3.
Of Star Wars media.
See,
it's better than like 4, 5, 6, I think.
This is outrageous. I could now do the whole podcast just on why you're wrong, objectively. How could you say that? A New Hope is like, that's what they based the new Top Gun on, right? It's like a classic. Empire Strikes Back, absolute classic. Return of the Jedi was good. I really loved of the new ones. I mean, Force Awakens at the time was just a nice return after the terrible prequels, Aaron. And then The Last Jedi, controversial, but I actually thought that was fantastic. And then what was even the Rise of Skywalker was possibly the worst one, which says a lot because if you rewatched Attack of the Clones, I enjoyed it as a kid. I was like, why does everyone hate this film? I rewatched it again as an adult. I was like, I see.
Yeah.
This is awful.
No, I won't defend episode 1 or 2, but I think 3 is three's up there.
But it's not just defending 3, is it? It is you're saying it's the best. I can't take it. We allow all opinions on this show. Except for that.
Feel free to email your complaints.
We need to do a poll after this, right? Of viewers, like, do you agree with Aaron? Yes or no? That's all I want to know. All right. We're tight for time on this episode, which is funny because I'll probably talk for ages, as usual. I'll do the usual shout out. So we've just done the Dubai GameExpo Summit. So that's finished. You can't come to that anymore. It was a very good episode. It was a very good show. Next up, we've got PGC Barcelona on June 3rd to 4th. The PGC Summit in Shanghai on July 30th. The PGC Helsinki on October 7th and 8th. We'll be doing PGC Jordan later this year. And we'll be doing some other events. And of course, the Mobile Games Awards during Gamescom. So yeah, plenty going on for us. So more traveling. So since we missed last week's show, I think the big story that we really want to cover is obviously one of the biggest pieces of news in the mobile games industry, maybe ever, is it was just an incredible story. So Apple in the US on the App Store must now allow developers to link out directly to their payment systems, to their web shops, effective immediately, a US judge said. And that's part of the Apple v. Epic case. And I'll give you the actual... so effective immediately, Apple cannot impose a commission on any fee on purchases consumers make outside of an app, nor audit or track such transactions. Restrict developers' style, language, formatting, quantity, follow, or placement of links for purchases outside of an app. Nor can it prohibit or limit the use of such calls to action. It can't exclude certain categories of apps and developers from obtaining link access. Can't interfere with consumers' choice to proceed in or out of an app with scare screens. So it must now use neutral messaging to inform users they will be using a third-party site. So basically just saying, you're about to use another website. That's about it. That's all they can do. Whereas before, a myriad of scare screens, and they can't restrict the developer's use of dynamic links. So yeah, so this is kind of, at the moment, the culmination of the Epic v. Apple case, which was filed in 2021. It was actually filed. And it's just taken this long to get to this point. And the judge was just scathing in their assessment of Apple's conduct. So this ruling wasn't actually expected, I don't think, at this time. And basically the judge in the case said this is a willful violation by Apple of an injunction issued in the case. So it had previously found that Apple's 30% commission was not tied to the value of its IP and was anti-competitive. And it also prohibited Apple from denying developers the ability to communicate with or direct consumers to purchases outside of the store. So I think that ruling was a bit more vague on purpose, a bit more lenient in some ways, because then you see, okay, what is Apple's reaction? And I'm remembering some of the response to the injunction strains credulity, and that despite knowing its obligations, thwarted the injunction's goals and continued its anti-competitive conduct solely to maintain its revenue stream. And I think later the judge says, use basically at every moment use the anti-competitive option, and it just gets absolutely mad. And the judge called out Apple's attempts to evade the ruling with a 27% commission on off-app purchases, where it had previously charged nothing. Had to go at new barriers. And the judge also accused Apple VP of Finance, Alex Roman, of lying under oath, citing internal communications at the company. So during this part of the case, the judge requested, I believe, contemporaneous documents, because I think the judge figured something's up here, something's not right. And then apparently Apple fellow Philip Schiller had advocated Apple to comply with the injunction. I read through a lot of the document. I don't know if it said explicitly like, oh, we should just let people link out freely. I don't know if that was the case. Then, but that the CEO, Tim Cook, ignored him. And then, to quote, Tim Cook chose poorly. Unbelievable. There's more just very, very incendiary quotes. That I thought the court would tolerate such insubordination was a gross miscalculation. As always, the cover-up made it worse. For this court, there is no second bite at the apple. So obviously you had to use a pun at the end there. And I think Apple is appealing, but it's not really clear. We're speaking to the lawyers at the moment to get their opinions, so we'll get that up on the site. But it's not really clear where Apple can really, how much maneuverability it has from here. If you remember, the Supreme Court already rejected to hear this case, but now I guess it's going to bounce in between courts again. I guess we'll see where this goes, but because Apple's already found in contempt and there's going to be criminal proceedings, it doesn't, as I always say, I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't put Apple in a good position, right? And I guess to finish with some of this, Epic Games CEO Tim Sweeney, he won, right? Against all odds. We spoke to him earlier this year. And he said, like, do you regret doing this? Because at the time, it kind of felt like almost a losing battle. And he said, no, don't regret it. I'm going to keep going. And did we write a story this week, Aaron? 100 million?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that. The legal fees are over 100 million, apparently.
That's crazy. And obviously, there can be more. I don't know if in this kind of case, but if you lose, sometimes you then have to pay also the other side's legal fees. So it can get extremely expensive. He said it was game over for the Apple tax. Fortnite's coming back. Obviously, he said again, Apple's 15 to 30% Junk fees are now just dead here in the US as they are in Europe. I don't think it's quite as bad for Apple in Europe, but it's kind of getting there. We obviously had the ruling, they breaching the Digital Markets Act, and there's another investigation happening into the core technology fee. So a lot of things are happening in some key markets for Apple. There was one more thing that I wanted to say about what it means. We'll be writing an article going a lot more in depth. There's some experts talking about what it means for the user acquisition space. I guess, is there more money now to spend on user acquisition? Does it change the kind of genres that you can and business models that you can actually use on mobile? If you think that profitability is actually quite tight with the 30% fee, maybe 10% taxes, user acquisition costs, and just general development costs of running a company. But by the time you get to the money you actually make from these games, it's a low percentage. Again, obviously can be very lucrative for companies, but this kind of changes things quite considerably. I guess it doesn't grow the market overall, but it makes, in theory, these publishers a lot more profitable. That's too much to talk about. I spoke with Exola today, and they actually, again, we'll put an article on the site. It was David Stelzer. And he said it doesn't actually necessarily mean that now 100% of revenue will be made off store. He was thinking in the near future, at least, be more like 50%. But bear in mind, before that, they were looking at 25 to 30%. So again, big change. And then now it's the last thing, probably, that I'll say on this matter. But one of the questions I had was, how does this affect market intelligence? I've raised this before. I reached out to Sensor Tower and they haven't got back to me on this. But one of the ways market intelligence companies generates estimates, and they have different algorithms, different ways of doing it. But one is they look at the rankings in each country across the globe for top grossing, top downloads. And from that and other things that they do, they can generate estimates. And then top one. Well, it's actually really difficult to get an estimate for the top number one grossing or number one downloaded. But, after that, they can start calculating, okay, we think this has got that, so that's got more, this has got less by country, etc. So that's how these platforms kind of live. And you could see that, I want to say, I'm not sure when it was, 3, 4, 5 years ago, Google Play actually shut off, I think it was Google Play, they actually shut off part of that part of those rankings to companies to see. So I think it used to be, you could see, I don't know, the top 1,000 or the top 500, and then they shut that off. So you could only see, I believe, this is my memory serving, so apologies if I'm incorrect. The general story is true. Facts, that's what we like with journalists. It was you could only see, say, the top 200, which actually greatly affects how much how accurate your estimates can be for the entire market, right? So that was a big problem. So now you can see a world where if a lot of payments 50% of payments go off store, where it's not being tracked, that really greatly affects estimates. And also for the bigger publishers, who will presumably be taking more advantage of this, it might look like their revenue is going down. But that's actually not the case. So directionally, potentially, it's not even true what's happening. So I think it's a big issue for them. I'm sure they're working on it. They've got ways of getting around it. Again, there are other ways that they generate estimates, but this is one of them. So maybe we'll start seeing partnerships with web shop companies, more partnerships with publishers to get access to that data, or to get access. I could go on forever. You can't. And then if you get access to actual data, that's potentially a problem because you're not allowed. No one's allowed to see that because of laws. Data AI got in trouble for different on that kind of subject. That's why they got fined $10 million a few years back. But yeah, that's one of the examples of a wider impact. It's not just developers can make more money. It has an effect on the entire ecosystem. So I've spoke for a while there. Sorry, as always. But Aaron, what do you think of the big news?
Yeah, so on that note, that reminded me, we talked a while ago about Pokemon Go has officially increased its revenue year on year, but based on the kind of estimates from how it's performed on stores, it's been going down. So we kind of presume that must be because people are moving to the web shop. But yeah, that's kind of a real example we've already seen that, as you say, is probably going to only scale up as more people find it easier to move their players to the web shop.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct, right? Because for a few years, you're looking at it like it's going down. I mean, we're taking their word for it, by the way.
Yeah, it could be like it made $1 more or something.
We're taking their word for it, though, which is a dangerous game. They said in that email, the past 3 years, you say? It had been growing.
I think so. Yeah.
Revenue had actually grown. Again, I guess there could be semantics, like you say. It could be $1 extra a year. So inflation didn't really go anywhere. And maybe they start including some revenue outside of actually not just in-app purchases, but from physical events. I don't know how much money they make, sponsorships, etc. So maybe the IAP revenue trend was downward, but that's not how they put it. So yeah, just incredible news. We've had commentary from the D2C companies. They're obviously extremely happy. Exola app charge, they're already making kind of money hand over fist, really. But now it's just, finally, we joked last time, they popped the champagne on a previous decision, and within hours, Apple was like, no, don't worry about it, 27% fee. So you kind of like, what is Apple going to do? You don't know, but it's different this time. It's very different this time. And I spoke with Exola earlier, and they said, obviously, like the phone's off the hook, basically, with people getting in touch now. So it's just a game changer. And we spoke with Mobile Mavens. We've got a couple articles of industry opinion, so please check those out on the site. Right, I'm going to do a lot more talking in this episode. Sorry, everybody. We're back to normal next week. But another big story I wanted to talk about was just a huge stories keep breaking while I'm away. It's outrageous. UK developer / publisher Tripledot has acquired AppLovin's games business. Now, we already kind of knew that as reported. We were kind of onto the story before, but we got beaten by, was it Business Insider, I believe, if I recall. And now it's kind of officially confirmed that Tripledot is the buyer. So, some key points. So, the deal will see Tripledot pay $400 million in cash. That is $150 million to be paid at the close of the transactions, which is expected in summer 2025. It was a bit confusing because I'm pretty sure in the financials it said Q2, and now it's saying summer. I didn't understand. Maybe it's a different Q2, remembering wrong. But yeah, $150 million at the close of transactions, and a $250 million secured promissory note to be issued by Eaton Games. Lior did actually go into a lot more detail. So I spoke with this CEO today. There'll be an article on that. It should be out on Friday, so probably before this podcast goes out. Please check that out. He goes into quite a bit of detail about actually how that all breaks down, according to him. So there's that $400 million. The total deal's worth $800. And AppLovin is picking up a 20% stake in the common equity of Tripledot. This is kind of interesting to me because it's like, AppLovin is selling its games business to get rid of it and taking a 20% stake in a new company. But there's good reasons for that, which we'll go into. So now what falls under Tripledot's umbrella is Lion Studios, Belka Games, Machine Zone, Clipwire Games, Magic Tavern, People Fun, Leggy, Athena Studios, Zen Life, and Zuru Gravity. So Tripledot will now house 12 studios under its belt. So it's just added 10. If you want to see how transformational this was, and Lior said himself, it was, a transformational deal. The company will now span across 23 cities with more than 2,500 employees. It will serve 25 million daily active users. Before this deal, I believe it was 12 million daily active users. So it's quite sizable. But again, this is more than double. And it is anticipated to bring in annual gross revenue of nearly $2 billion, it said. I asked Lior about this. I said, what were you earning before this? He says they were profitable since their first year of business, but he wouldn't. He said, as a private company, basically, he didn't have to say how much they were making before this deal. But they were ads-focused business before, apparently profitable every year since their first year of business. Now it's kind of a 50-50% split between in-app purchases and ads. So again, it's just really, really significant deal for this company. Really just changes who they are effectively. So a couple points from that and from the interview I had. So I asked obviously the obvious question then when you do this kind of deal, will you do an IPO? Is that the exit strategy or just the next step? And he said it's basically like they may do one, and he said this does set them up more than they were before for that because they weren't really a place to do that before. It's not the immediate plan. I did ask if this deal could represent an existential threat to the company's future, because it's a lot of money. And before the reporting, we reported from AppLovin's really own financials, is a lot of it could be in loans. Well, that's what it sounded like, and even AppLovin could put forward the money, be paid back, so Tripledot could afford this deal. And bear in mind, their last valuation, I think, was $1.6 billion. So they're spending $800 million, which is half their worth. A few years later, it's a bit different. And this deal now values Tripledot at $2 billion. So again, very, very substantial for them to be doing. But he said he was adamant it's not an existential threat, and claims they don't have that much debt from the deal. He didn't say how much. So apparently it's not that highly leveraged for this deal. And he said, so you've got the $150 million effectively cash up front. And he said they've previously raised over $250 million for M&A. So maybe some of that is still left for this. And again, they've been profitable since their first year. And really, remember the owners, the co-founders, are three of them. In the UK Games Rich list, in the top 2025, they were all in it. All the Tripledot founders were in it. So they're not short of money. And Akin, the president, is it Bloomberg? We called him the mobile gaming kingpin. They're not short of money or experience. Again, I'll have more in-depth analysis in the interview. Lior said there's no plans to close any of the studios it picked up or to do layoffs currently. They're also looking at new games, which was kind of important to him, as well as obviously the existing games that will keep bringing that $2 billion in revenue. I asked specifically about the status of Machine Zone, because it kind of sounded like it had closed before, which we reported on. And even one of the former staff members said it had effectively closed. He said there is a very small team left, which basically operates Game of War and Mobile Strike. And they won't be doing anything new for the foreseeable future because they don't have the team in place to work on new projects. So, and worth remembering, Tripledot is historically a casual-based company, as I said, and ads-based. Lior kind of suggested that the history of MZ and Machine Zone was a reason that they don't want to close it because it's like important to the industry. But if you look at it, it's really just a husk of what it used to be. And whatever you think of its games and its impact, which a lot of them were for 4X strategy reskins, but its impact on the UA landscape has been really meaningful for the entire industry. And it did try other projects like Reign of Vampires, I think it was called, but that was cancelled last year, I believe. And yeah, it was in soft launch, and they just don't have anything else. I would actually be genuinely surprised if they just keep this operation going in like a year's time. But we'll see. But he said there's going to be no closures. They don't anticipate layoffs. That's not what they want to do. But I guess you would say that before the layoffs potentially then happen. It depends, right? And then lastly, as your point's already made, but yeah, 50-50 revenue split between IPs and ads. So again, changes a lot. Apparently, I think it was, again, this will be in the article in much better detail. I do apologize. I think he said no game, could be no studio. I think he said no game represents more than 10% of revenue. Because I asked if, what if there's one or two failures from these studios, would the entire company kind of collapse? And he disagreed with that. It's not going to be like, I guess, the examples, according to him, that we've seen with Embracer. He didn't call that Embracer, but that was kind of the example I was kind of alluding to. Actual last thing. The other thing I said was, do they have the capability to actually operate this massive business? And he said yes. Obviously, there's some shifting that they have to do at the kind of the leadership level to adapt to this. But that, along with the 10 studios, there is a kind of, I can't remember, like a publishing or managing operation for all of those studios from AppLovin. So they actually get some of that, I guess you can call it infrastructure, the team that was managing the whole thing. But it does sound like, AppLovin didn't really care about it in the end. So it's probably, as a guess, probably a bit understaffed, right? So I think there's some work there for them to do by the sound of it from the interview, but they're pretty confident going forward. So it's really interesting to see. Good for the UK games industry, and they've suddenly become a major European games company. They're already pretty big, but under the radar. Now they're out there for everyone to see, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Sorry, Aaron, I keep throwing stuff at you. I've been desperate to talk about these stories. I was tucked up. I was tucked up in bed last night. Turned the lights off. Saw the story, and I was like, I better write this. I don't know. So yeah, lights on. Wrote it. But yeah, what do you think of the news?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, as you say, it's a huge deal that's it's really skyrocketed Tripledot's portfolio and yeah, just the number of studios. It would be nice to know the specifics on what their profits and stuff were like before versus the new projections. But
I tried. The only thing they say, which they said publicly already, was the 2 billion revenue gross. Although he said close to, he didn't say 2 billion exactly.
right, but yeah, obviously, it just seems we've got this like constant wave of massive deals going on of late. Yeah, I think you've covered most of the points, to be honest. But
So sorry, Aaron. I'm just talking.
No, that's all right. I could tell how excited you were to get it all out.
No. We'll go through the final bits. I'll do some very quick summary. We got a hard finish today, but I'll do. So I've obviously, as I said earlier, I've been to Gamescom LATAM, seen the emerging kind of market there. I've been there when it was big festival many years ago. And the Dubai GameExpo Summit, powered by PGC, I've been there for a few days, which was really interesting. I think if I had just one takeaway from being here in both places, is just like coming from the UK games industry, and that's not to say the UK games industry doesn't have massive issues, massive challenges and struggles. It does, to do with like talent, the education of talent that's already at studios is a problem. People trying to get juniors trying to get jobs. These were all challenges. Years ago, over a decade ago, there was a big thing about tax breaks, trying to get those in, get government support for that. Managed to get it in the end, but not after loads of people left Canada. Sore subject for a lot of people in the UK games industry. But despite all that, actually, you kind of take, at least personally, kind of take things kind of for granted now in the UK, I think, in some aspects, that it's just there and that I think companies can be founded. There is some support for them. I know it's a bit difficult lately with general investment, but there is support there. There's a big community here. There's obviously a lot of talent. And so there's a lot of infrastructure already in place that you can be successful. And actually, when you see in Brazil and now what they're trying to do in Dubai and in general in the Middle East and the United Arab Emirates, they obviously have a lot of money, but it's just the amount you have to do. And it takes such a long time to build the community of developers, build a culture. So in Finland, they built a culture of sharing. You've got to build that. You've got to build the support structures. You've got to attract investment. Gamescom LATAM, they're paying for publishers and I think investors as well to come over to see their games, because one of those deals might make all that budget worthwhile. But they have to do that to get people to actually see their games. You can't just do it like online. Really, a lot of effort goes into, and when you're in the UK and you have already established big events, right, obviously, Pocket Gamer Connects London, and then in the US, you have established events like GDC where people come together locally, and you're just known as a bigger scene. Maybe perception is you're a bit safer. You might come from a well-known company with that experience. It's just so incredibly difficult to build these industries and just get government support in the first place. Like Brazil has, I think, had a lot of challenges getting that. There's a new government in place now. They've got a new legal framework for games, which basically will open up support for the industry. And yeah, the exciting stuff that they're doing here. But it's going to take such a long time. In the end, it might not really come to fruition, especially if your government might decide, oh, actually, AI is what we want now. It's very difficult. And one of my other takeaways from Brazil was that I think there's increasing support for entrepreneurs, by the sound of it, for entrepreneurs there. They tripled the number of studios that they have from 400 something to over 1,000. By the last data, they're going to release fresh data this year. When I was speaking to people, if you're just a worker there, for some people, it was like, well, a guy was working for a bank, wanted to work in games. He worked for an international company that set up an operation there, paying nothing, like well below even possibly what his rent could be. And it was just like, well, he just needed to get his foot in the door, and his long-term ambition was to leave the country. So you've got to compete with these established hubs abroad. So that's the other challenge. So yeah, it's just incredibly difficult, and just the sheer willpower of especially a few people that really want to push their industries forward. It's quite commendable when People are that passionate. But ultimately, how successful they're going to be, we'll see. Brazil's been trying to do it for a long time, and it has built up an industry, but it's still got to push hard all the time to kind of, I guess, whatever it's going to be defined as, and become like a key hub in the global industry. So that was what I wanted to say on that. The reasons that I've been away. Aaron, I'm going to give you the microphone. You've got a few minutes. But I've talked too much. I'm so sorry. But yeah, you had an interesting story about the Golden Week.
Yeah. So I've just put a big kind of data dive on the site today as of recording. So be sure to check it out, everyone. But so I went through a load of AppMagic data to put together a bit of a analysis on Golden Week in Japan, which is an annual holiday, just for anyone who's not aware. So it's April 20th to May 5th every year. Basically, they have like 4 public holidays over the course of the week. So they just make it like Golden Week. And it's a big thing for many industries, and mobile games kind of get in on it as well. And particularly, like the Japanese developed mobile games will often do events or special bundles or sales or, something to, I guess, try and capture their Japanese player base, while people are off work. And so I thought it was quite interesting to look at some of the top performing games over that period. According to AppMagic, Pokemon TCG Pocket was the top earning mobile game in Japan over the course of that week. So it made over $18 million gross. I'm not sure whether it was when we missed the podcast last week, but its Pocket overall is on its way to $1 billion now. Again, check that article out if you're unaware that it's moving even faster than Pokemon Go did back in the day. And like out in the real world, you've not noticed it as the same kind of phenomenon that Go was. I guess that's down to the genre, really. But yeah, so I guess with that context, it's a little surprised that it was the biggest game in Japan over the week. Bandai Namco's SD Gundam G Generation Eternal was the second highest earning game in Japan over Golden Week.
The second longest name as well, actually.
Yeah, yes, good point. So that made about 15 million. It's worth noting, I think it came out on April 16th, so obviously only just before Golden Week, so it's probably kind of had a bit of both impacting it there. But really interestingly, Onos Corporation's The Battle Cats, which is a 2012 tower defense game, has basically been like skyrocketing in revenue since like late 2024. And so that ended up being the third highest grossing game in Japan, even though it's like a 13-year-old game.
I played that for the first time like a week ago. Somehow for the first time. It's been out for ages. This is quite fun.
Yeah, I've never tried it myself.
It's ridiculous, the different kind of cats and animals on it. It's very quirky, also.
But yes, that beat. So Monster Strike came 4th. Konami's Professional Baseball Spirits A came 5th. So all the top 5 were developed by Japanese companies. Out of the top 10, I think 7 of them were developed in Japan. So the exceptions were Wuthering Waves, Honkai Star Rail, and Last War Survival. Overall, across the top 10 games in Japan, they generated 81 million over Golden Week, which is quite a big increase. So last year, the top 10 games made about 45 million. So yeah, that's like about 80% from last year's Golden Week. And there are also more in the top 10 this year that were developed in Japan compared to last year, which I thought was quite interesting. So I've done quite a thorough piece on it, so I'd please read it.
We'll put a link in the comments. Really interesting. It's just how these seasonal events big events can be very lucrative if done right. It's really interesting that it's almost kind of doubled last year, because we meant to do an article. We'll do an article, but like Japan's kind of mobile games market was flagging, right? I think we might have touched upon it a bit last year in one of your articles. But yeah, it's actually been on the decline for a while. So maybe is this a signal it's on the up, or they just had a good week? We'll look into that for sure.
Oh, another just quick point to note as well. So the last 2 years, Fate Grand Order was the top grossing game in Japan during Golden Week. So it fell to 8th place this year, and Pokemon Pocket obviously winning
Yeah.
so to speak, this year. Made about 50% more than Fate Grand Order made last year when it had the top spot.
That's quite interesting that it's fallen so far.
Yeah, and as I say, it held first place for 2 years, so it's surprising it's fallen that much.
It's been out for a very long time. Another one for us to delve into. Love all this data stuff. Right, that brings us to the end of the week in mobile games. Apologies for everyone that I was talking mostly on this episode. I really wanted to get out those couple big stories and I had a lot to say. I do apologize. I know, a white man with opinions is crazy, but thank you.
You're cultured, you're well travelled.
I'm well travelled, yes. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Aaron, for putting up with me and for your great insights. Appreciated.
Thank you. It's I felt like a listener this week.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm joking.
The Golden Week stuff is really interesting. And we didn't even touch upon Scopely making $5 billion, by the way. I guess that's always news, isn't it? It's made $6 billion now. Right. Once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. I'll be back home, hopefully, next week. We'll have a more normal podcast. I'll actually make a point of just not really speaking, maybe next week. At least not introducing stories. We'll see how that actually works. Thanks again. Goodbye.